a person who was in 10 Pro Bowls with the Lions. He went on to coach them. He was their winningest coach up until this point. Joe Schmidt, how you doing, Joe?
Hey, good afternoon. How are you?
Good. What do you think about those Lions here? I mean, they're coming back from the dead for like 10 years.
Well, I'm so happy about that. I'm happy for the coach, especially. He seems like I don't know him well, but he's very thorough, great coach. I think that this season will prove me right. I think that they have a possibility of winning maybe 9-10 ball games. The difference in their team is the quarterback, the outside receiver, Calvin Johnson, and the defense is playing a little bit better. So they have some guys that can play, and of course that makes good coaches when you have guys that can play. So I look for them to do and continue, with their winning streak, so to speak. Of course, they play the Bears, don't they? That's going to be a difficult game. I watched the Bears the other night, and they look much improved, and their defense is playing well, and the offense is playing well. So I think it's going to be a good game.
And on the defensive side of the ball, the Lions aren't too shabby either.
No, they, defensive tackles have improved. Especially the defensive line is much improved. And there's some weakness in some of the linebackers and the secondary, but with that good defensive line, the good rush, they've been able to they've helped that secondary quite a bit.
It's been a long time since Detroit's won a championship in football. Back when you were playing, what, 58, 57?
57.
57, yeah. That is a long time.
Funny how time flies.
You're reminding me of my age.
Hey, if they ask you to still be able to come out for a few downs and play little linebacker for them, right?
So. But we always, look forward to playing the Bears. I got to know some of those guys back then, Rick Caceres and Bill George. Were good friends of mine. I really enjoyed playing against those guys, and they were good guys. Good football players and great individuals.
Now, when you came into the NFL as a 7th-round pick, you must have wondered what took them so long to draft me, and then you find yourself on a world championship team as a rookie.
Well, I was disappointed, not from the standpoint of coming to Detroit, but I didn't really think I had much of a chance to make a championship team. They just won the championship the year before, and I really wanted to play for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and they had told me through the grapevine that they were going to draft me. So I was planning on being a Pittsburgh Steeler, and I come from Pittsburgh. That's where I went to school, and I was all excited about the possibility of being a Pittsburgh Steeler. But as I listened to the draft on the radio at that particular time, the rounds went by, and eventually the Lions drafted me, and so I thought, well, I'll at least go up there and give it a shot and see what happens. So, but everything turned out for the best. I played on some great teams and with some great football players, and I've had an extremely exciting life here in Detroit.
I was going to say, if you ended up with the Steelers, you would have ended up on some awfully bad teams, wouldn't you?
At that time, yes. But again, I had an older brother who played for the Steelers. He played at it was Carnegie Tech in Pittsburgh. He played 1 year before he had to go to the service, during that time. And so I always felt that that's where I belonged, and that's my hometown, and I was anxious to play professional football naturally, and especially in my hometown.
I know Pittsburgh and Pennsylvania in general is known for their quarterbacks. I mean, you've had Montana, Marino. It's like a breeding ground.
Well, you take, again, I don't know if you've been to Pittsburgh, the point where the two rivers, Allegheny and Monongahela, join the Ohio, and you go down the Ohio River, and you take a radius of about 30 miles within that point there, and you have some great football players. You have Montana, you have John Unitas lived about a mile and a half from where I grew up. You have Mike Ditka, you have Tony Dorsett, you have Marino, and there's Kelly, who played for, I guess, Buffalo.
Right.
So there's, of course, Big Joe. So there are quite a few Hall of Famers within that area, and I would say there's probably 10, 15 guys that are from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, that are in the NFL Hall of Fame.
Now, what running back gave you the most trouble?
Oh, well, I don't necessarily gave us the most trouble. Sometimes the ones that I played against, there's a whole list of guys. Of course, the one Jim Brown. Naturally, we played the Browns quite frequently, and I always look at Rick Caceres as a great football player from the Bears. We had Hugh McElhaney, Joe Perry, just to mention some of those guys. But during that time with the 12 teams, most teams had pretty good running backs, and at least one who was pretty damn good. And the guys I mentioned always gave everybody trouble.
What was it like going against, in practice, Bobby Lane? I mean, I've heard stories of Bobby Lane basically from Art Donovan saying, you know what, I'd tackle him during a game, I'd smell the alcohol, and I'd say, Bobby, I could smell it from last night. And he goes, I was drinking at halftime. Is that Art being Art, or was that true?
No, that's just Art being Art. Bobby gets credit for a lot of things that really never transpired. There's all kinds of stories about him, and I don't want to paint him as a choir boy or anything of that nature. But he liked to go out and have a good time. But when he stepped on a football field in practice and in the game, he was all business, and he enjoyed himself, and he'd always drag a couple of guys around with him, and hit a few places, and that was his mentality. And but in spite of that, he was always prepared to play. He always knew what he had to do. He always played up to expectations. Like everybody else, he's had bad games naturally, but he set the pace for everybody. He wanted everybody to play to the maximum, and if he didn't play well, I know a couple of times during the course of his career where he would, maybe somebody wasn't blocking properly, and in the offensive line, he'd stop the game, go over, and tell the coach, Parker, he says, get so-and-so the hell out of the game. And he says, he's not playing. And, of course, at that particular time, we only had 33 guys on the team, so we didn't have the luxury of saying, taking some guy out and put another guy in. And he said, if he keeps up and not blocking, he says, I'm coming the hell out. I'm not playing. But, be that what it is, he expected everybody to perform properly, and in most cases, that's the way it was.
What was it like being in the defensive huddle with Alex Karras?
Oh, Alex was kind of quiet in the huddle. Once in a while, he'd say something, but in most cases, too, he was Alex wasn't much of a practice player. He was all a game player, and he could play. I mean, he's as good as, in my estimation, he should be in the Hall of Fame. But being he had some problems there with gambling and so forth, I think that's the thing is keeping him out of the Hall of Fame. Alex had very quick hands and quick feet, and very strong. And when he went to play, I don't think there were too many guys at that time could block him.
I see that they started experimenting with the radios and the headsets when you were playing, and you had a little problem with it the one game.
Well, that was something that was new. They had a situation where they had a receiver in the helmet, and my defensive coach would call the plays in. And, a lot of times he would take his time and, the offensive team would be coming up to the line of scrimmage, and I had to get the defense out, so I would call it myself. And he would get a little upset about that once in a while, but he had to do his job, and I had to do my job. And if it wasn't in there on time, I had to do what I thought was best. And we got in a few contests about that a little bit, and but it was something that they were experimenting with, and I would prefer to call my own defenses, but he felt that it was necessary for him to be involved in it, so I had to go along with it.
What was the transition like going from player to coach?
Well, it's kind of difficult, to tell you the truth. I only had 6 months on the staff prior to becoming head coach, and that was just like, 1 year I'm playing and next year I'm coach. So everybody I coached or everybody was on the teams that I played with, and naturally they're good teammates, good friends, and at times it was difficult. At times where I had to make some adjustments and cut some teammates that we had rookies coming in that I had to replace them, and it was difficult from that standpoint. And everybody was watching you naturally at all times, so it was a little touch and go at times. But I think we were able to handle it. It got a little tight at times, but of course, when you're coaching, everything doesn't go properly, and so you have to make adjustments accordingly.
When you were a coach, I mean, people always talk about someone's going to get killed during an NFL game, but someone actually did die during the game, Chuck Hughes, when you were coaching. What was that like?
Well, Charlie, unfortunately at that time, the physicals and things of that nature were not adequate, and they didn't do the extensive testing and so forth that they do today. And his whole family had some congenital heart problems, and that wasn't really established when he was getting the physical. And nobody, of course, he kept it quiet. Naturally, and of course, it was against the Bears, and he was always on he wasn't a starter, but he was always walking next to me, and he always, the coach put me in, and so we were losing it there in Tiger Stadium against the Bears, and I said, okay. It was toward the end of toward the end of the game, or I guess it was the end of the game, and I got him a pass pattern, and he ran down the field, and it was like a go, long pass pattern, and he came back, and then he ran another one, and he came back, and he dropped over, and he died right there on the field. So it was quite an experience, naturally, for the whole team and the whole organization, and of course his family. And it was difficult to move on. It was, you, regardless what you say and how you say it, and how you put it, it's never, in my mind, was never adequate. And even today, I think about that every football season, and think about his family, and think about his young child. I think he had a son was just like 8-10 months old, and it's difficult to erase that from your mind, and it's an unfortunate thing, but I guess those things happen in life, and but it sort of naturally put a damper on our season that year, and it was difficult to continue on. We had to go down naturally to his hometown. It was in Texas, El Paso, I think. Whole team flew down and went to the services and so forth, and they came back. And so it's difficult to get a team back to where they should be thinking about a game when something that drastic happens. But again, there wasn't anything like what you mentioned, grief counseling and things of that nature. I think it was a difficult thing to get over. I don't like to lay that and use that as an excuse season, but it's difficult to overcome.
It is. I mean, you did a great job, though. I mean, and I'm glad the NFL basically straightened everything out. Thank you so much for your time, Joe. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Well, thank you very much, and Chicago is going to be a tough game. I know they've got a good football team.
Should be a fun game.
Well, it always is.
Thank you very much.